You would always want to be on the side of having good credit.
Do you think it pays to have good credit? Something else that I want to talk about, Tim, and this is probably gonna dig deep into our conversation here, and that is going to be pricing your home or your listing price. So before we go into that, let me tell you my viewpoint. I'm always
Yep.
digging deep in things, right? So my viewpoint on all of this, Tim, before I owned Sturgis Credit Repair, I worked in the car sales industry. I did that for many, many years. So I've gotten to the point now where people that came into the car dealership and they had a trade in, right? Of course, they wanted the most money for their trade in. If something was
Mhm.
worth $15,000, they're instantly thinking they can get $20,000 for it. So they wanted retail value for their trade in. But then when it comes to the car that they came to the dealership for, the car that they're purchasing, they wanted to take the retail value off of that and buy it for trade-in value. So if the
Yep.
car was 30 grand, they're trying to negotiate and buy it for 20 grand. So
Right.
look, I'm all towards saving money, making money, coming up on top. I get that. But these people are not doing it. They're not thinking like that. They're just thinking imaginary numbers and they go with it. So by me doing that for years and years and years, it has trained me to be more of a guy who prioritizes convenience, right? Because in my viewpoint, I don't have time to waste going back and forth over numbers. You come here, you know what vehicle you want, you've already seen the price, you see the price right there. The price is the price. You should have went to kbb.com and just gotten an estimate based on good value of what your trade in is worth, somewhere in that range. Now, look, if you're coming in, you're trying to wiggle 2 or 3 grand if you're paying cash, sure, but if you're financing, I mean, I wouldn't say that it doesn't matter, but if you're financing, clearly you should be focusing on the monthly payment. However, the total price is still a factor. I get that. But long story short, do some of your research beforehand. So, people that are trying to sell their home, I kind of feel like you may see this a lot where people are just assuming that their home is some magical number because they have a goal, they have a plan. They think, oh,
Right.
if I can sell my home for an extra $50,000, that is going to put me in this new home that I probably shouldn't be buying in the first place. But I only want to work with a listing agent who's going to be willing to do that, and kind of like me. Like I said, my examples of me being in the car business for many years, when it came to my wife and I deciding to relocate and move across the country and sell our home and purchase a new home, the very first thing I did was look at the new home values in the Phoenix area. And then after that, I looked at the selling price or the average selling price or listing prices of homes that's in our neighborhood that's around the same square footage,
Yep.
same age. Now, there were some homes we had extended patios and things like that. So, give or take here and there. So, we just used our surroundings as an example. And I sat down with my wife and I said, look, we can potentially get this, and this is what it's going to cost to move. And, the realtor fees may come out to be 6% on both end,
Right.
or total, 3% and 3%. And then we're going to have to pay 9 times out of 10. The buyer that's looking at this type of home, they probably want their closing costs paid. So this is what it's going to potentially cost. If it doesn't cost this much, oh well, this is a bonus for us. And guess what? The day my realtor came over, I sat there quietly. She went over everything. And she literally just kind of told me the same thing. The average time for a home like this to sell in this area or the zip code, what the homes are going for per square footage, et cetera. And then boom, she said, hey, Chris, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think this is where we should start. She kind of written down a listing number, and I kind of giggle internally because one, she pretty much nailed it on the head, but she was like 5 grand more than what I was actually assuming. So, right
Yeah.
then and there, I didn't waste my time. I didn't waste the realtor's time. And like I said, I'm a guy that prioritizes conveniency, right? So I'm not going to contact a realtor to come over and she's like, hey, your home is worth 400, but I'm thinking that I can sell my home for 500,000. That's unrealistic. So, when it comes to selling your home by owner, what is your opinion on homeowners coming up with a price to sell their home, do you think they should just jump out and just do an appraisal and just list it at that? Should they just buy that up front, do the inspection up front so they know what to expect? Or, do you teach these people on how to calculate their price per square footage and things like that? How does it come around homeowners coming up with a price to list their home?
The first thing to recognize when you're pricing a home is to figure out who sets the actual price for it. So, and I've got bad news for anybody looking to sell a house. If you're not looking at this the right way, the world doesn't care what you want for that house. The world doesn't care what you need to get for that house. The world doesn't care that your brother who's passed on helped you build that deck out back, and so it has sentimental value to you. And they don't care that your kids took the first steps in that house.
Yeah.
The market does not care. The market is going to do just what Christopher did, and they're going to do something called a comparative market analysis. They're going to look at all the other homes in your area that are similar in year, in size, in amenities, and they're going to comparison shop, just like Amazon has taught us how to do. When we need a new coffee mug, we don't care who's selling it to us. We just care that it holds X amount of ounces and it does this right here, and we're just going to comparison shop based on price. So price is the most, and I would almost say the only thing that matters in the beginning as it relates to marketing your property. It is the most important thing to get right. And the worst thing you can do for the overall value of your home is to price high, leaving room to negotiate down. That is old-fashioned advice. It works on infomercials and TV. It does not work in a real world where you have competitive bidders. And here's why. Because the market is the only entity out there, not the agent, not the owner, not your Uncle Larry, who's a broker back in the 70s, because the market is the only entity out there that gets to decide the value of your home. Would it be better or worse to have, or I should say, would it be better to have more or less people competing over it? I would say more, right? So the more people we get, well, how do we get more people attracted to an asset? Well, one of the best ways to do it is to strategically underprice it. Strategic underpricing does a number of things, but the best and most important thing it does is it gets a lot more eyeballs on it than it otherwise would have. If you try to price high with room to negotiate down, you're going to find zero interest in your home. Maybe one or two people will look at it and they're never going to make an offer because nobody's interested in fighting their way down. But for some weird reason, and I can't explain it, human beings love auctions. They love bidding against each other. It's that competitive nature. The best way to spike the value of a toy is to give it to one toddler and watch the other toddler immediately want that toy. That could have been sitting in the closet for 6 months and they both forgot it existed, but you give it to one and the other one. I'm sorry to inform everybody, we have not outgrown that. We are the exact way today. And there's a multi-billion dollar company called eBay out there, if you don't believe me. So spiking this urgency, this scarcity of this asset and seeing other people compete for it is one of the best ways to get an above asking offer on your home, to get people to bid it far above where you were ever going to do it. So yeah, that is just such an important lesson for people to take home. I'm sorry if you don't get what you want for your home, you can't force anybody to buy your home. No. All you can do, there are tricks though, and I don't know if I call them tricks, if they're strategies, if they're hacks, whatever we call them, but there are things that we do, people in my educational program that regularly help people get far above what they thought they could get for their home. We do things, we have like very short open houses, maybe 2 hours. I mean, I want there to be a circus in the front yard. I want there to be people rubbing elbows. I want people yelling at each other over parking. And this works because I did this at one house and I just stepped out to get a breath of fresh air and I casually looked to my left and there was a lady writing an offer to purchase on the steering wheel of her car. And that's because there was two other couples in there that she overheard saying, "Hey, we got to get with our agent and get an offer on this place. This is amazing."
Cool.
That now let's put ourselves in the opposite position. What if that place was open 8 hours that day and there was nobody else in that home? And do you think she would have left that place and started writing an offer to purchase on her steering wheel? Nope. No. She sure would not have. So there are things that we can do. There are things that we can do before we even hit the market. We do what's called a pre-listing inspection, where one of my favorite tactics as a buyer's agent when I was representing a buyer was to go make an offer on a home, lock it up, take it off the market, get the inspection report back, and beat the seller over the head with the inspection report until they agreed to our demands for a price reduction, because I don't know, the paint was chipping in a bathroom that nobody's looked at in 3 years.
Right.
Something stupid like that. But that's what they do. And so what I do is I take away the ammunition. I take the ammo out of the gun before they can even point it at me. Before we even hit the market, we do a pre-listing inspection and we address all the handyman level issues on that listing report. Then we have them come out and do a free re-inspection with the punch list diminished. Then when somebody comes to look at our house, we're saying, listen, I'm not dumb enough to believe that you're dumb enough to believe that you think that any house is free from problems, because every other seller out there, they're going to tell you this house is perfect. You're not going to find anything wrong. It's going to get full value. We're not coming off this thing for $1. My sellers, they say, listen, this house is a great house, warts and all. I want to be upfront with you. Here's some of the things that we weren't able to fix, that we did a building inspection report. Would love for you to take a look at that, but I want you to know what you're getting into. And by doing that, you've immediately set yourself head and shoulders apart of every other seller out there. And that's going to buy you so much cachet when it comes to negotiating power. It's going to buy you a ton of respect when it comes to your integrity. And again, these things in combination, not one of them individually, but doing all of these things together, plus more that I talk about in the course, this is how we spike the value of your home.
Right. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. If you wish to be a guest on our podcast, visit StirgusCreditRepair.com and click the podcast page to schedule an episode. If you need help with your credit, you can also sign up at StirgusCreditRepair.com and start your free trial today.
Stirgus Credit Repair. Stirgus Credit Repair. If you want a new house, call us. If you need a new